I am married to someone who dreams bigger for me than I do for myself.
Mm.
Michael is the type of partner that will look out into the world and will say, Marissa, you should do this. You're great at this. You have this skill. And there's so many times, especially as a woman, where I'm telling myself, I'm not smart enough, or for some reason, I don't belong in that room. When the reality is, I do.
How did it feel to be named one of DCO's 2025 Power Couples in Dallas? And what does that recognition mean to both of you?
You go first.
Sure. Humbling, I think it's, we've never sought out the limelight or, accolades. We do the work that we've done, whether it's professionally or personal and civic engagements, because of how we were raised, values that we live are and have lived our lives by, and really to be a service in a variety of ways. And so if the acclaim or accolades come with that, great. If they don't, that's okay as well.
Mhm.
But it was definitely a humbling moment for us, and it was special. We, have our marriage certainly is something that we have worked at together.
Mhm.
But professionally, we're in two different kind of arenas, and so it's not often that we get a chance to be showcased, as a couple. And so that was definitely something that was special and something that I know we will cherish for some time.
Yeah, I agree with Michael. I think that the recognition was very humbling. And
Mhm.
I'm from Dallas, although I'd moved away for many years. I grew up in Oak Cliff, and to see the city of Dallas celebrate us in this way was pretty special. I'll also add that since that article came out, we've received so much support and so many kind words, and we've heard this consistent theme of everyone just loved hearing our story. And to Michael's
Mhm.
point, it's not often that we are recognized together. In fact, I think this may be the first time, to be quite honest. And so it was surprising to us to see that, wow, our story as a couple is really what resonated
Mhm.
with the community, and people wanted to hear about our journey and the arc of our marriage. And so that's been really cool to see the response that we've received. And it's just been great. I mean, Michael and I, our journey has been incredible, and I'm very thankful. But I mean, it's had some highs and lows. And so
Mhm.
just being transparent has also been really refreshing as well.
Absolutely, and I appreciate you saying that, Marissa. I think, another piece of wanting to do this podcast is that we share the high and lows. I think not only does the generation of the 20-year-olds, the 30-year-olds need to hear the lows as well as the highs, but they just need to know that it's real and it's okay. And so I do want to ask you, you each lead with impact, in your own right. I mean, when I look at the doors that have been opened to both of you, it's overwhelmingly impressive. I believe that, I always say we have a sort of coined a term in our household that we want to be the answer to people's prayers. Those
Mhm.
prayers that people, say at midnight when no one's watching. We want to be the hands and feet that answer those prayers. And I truly feel that you both, in your own right, individually as well as a couple, are that. What's the secret or or what's your, just what is your wisdom that you use to supporting one another while building individual legacies? What's the wisdom that you would share in doing that?
Yeah, one of the things that I will share is that I am married to someone who dreams bigger for me than I do for myself.
Mm.
Michael is the type of partner that will look out into the world and will say, Marissa, you should do this. You're great at this. You have this skill. And there's so many times, especially as a woman, where I'm telling myself, I'm not smart enough, or for some reason, I don't belong in that room. When the reality is, I do because of my training, because of my background. And along the way, Michael's been the person who said, no, you're the right person for this role. And so you need to go after it. So I think having someone like that who is constantly pushing me out of my comfort zone has
Mhm.
really, really helpful.
That's good.
I would agree, from my perspective. I think the wisdom that I would share is it's really important that you take time and be very thoughtful and intentional about the person that you are choosing to share your life journey with. Going back to, our origin story back in college, that kind of courting period, looking back, was pivotal, right, for the kind of shape and kind of directionality of our journey. The conversations that we had, I mean, till 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, talking at that time, we were young, just what are your hopes and dreams? Do you want to travel around the world? What do you want to do? Do you want to have a family? I mean, it really set the stage for all of the both decision points that we've been faced with, but also the experiences that we've had. And I'm grateful to then be with someone that is supportive, that will push me, that will ask critical questions, and ultimately, I think, give me the affirmation that irrespective of what is going on in the world, like it's going to be okay. Like we're going to go through it together. And That has been particularly comforting in the space that I'm in, where I'm trying to solve for some pretty intractable issues, whether it's healthcare, education, homelessness, housing. Like, I mean, these are things that are very heavy every single day. And so having someone that can be very supportive and serve as a respite and as a refuge through those processes is certainly necessary. And I'm grateful and blessed to have Marissa in my life.
Absolutely. One key thing that I picked up that you said, is it that you both have a safe place with one another, a safe place to land, whether it's at the end of the day or whether it's with your goals, your dreams, or, I like to say the callings and mandates and assignments that God has for you, right? Um, you both are that safe place for one another, I would say.
Yes. Yeah, that's
That's a
right.
great
Yeah,
way of putting
it
it.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and the assignment, that's a very apropos term. We've had many different assignments, and I'm sure there are going to be continued assignments that we haven't even envisioned yet. The ability to have a space to listen, be thoughtful, and to reflect is helpful because the path is nonlinear.
And Lisa, I will just add, this is not easy. I mean, there have certainly been points in our relationship where Michael has wanted to do something and I have not necessarily been in agreement. Like that alignment is not always there, and it's hard when when there's a misalignment and we disagree. But I think, over time through prayer and communication, we figure it out. But what's interesting about life is that opportunities present themselves when you least expect it. And so you have to really be willing to be flexible and to compromise. And I think that's something that, we continue to work on, but we've certainly, I mean, we've been married for over 20 years now. And so it is definitely something we've had to learn and practice.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't know if you guys know this about Lawrence and I, but gosh, it's going on 18 years ago, we decided to leave corporate America respectfully, and, we started a company together. Actually, I started it first, and he came along 6 months later, and here we are 18 years later, and we
What?
have worked together. So, I relate it to what you just said, Marissa, that, it's not easy. There's things that I disagree with
Mhm.
completely, whether it's the process he wants to take or how he's thinking about something, and the part of the journey where I've grown the most is during those times
Mhm.
when I've had to figure out, "Okay, I need to figure out how to approach this. Gotta pray about it, figure out how to approach this in a different way," and so I just felt like I could relate to what you just said. Uh, you know, it isn't easy, so well, let me ask you all this. I thought this was so interesting, and I know it's never too late, but I'm about to become an empty nester now. Gosh, in 2 months, I can't believe this. Um, and I feel like, Marissa, you've been walking this journey with me because you know Lawrence and,
Mhm.
a little bit. But I read that you have weekly family meetings
Oh, yeah.
and official home titles. I love this. So you're developing leadership. Leadership is just be like it's like Leadership Academy at the Horns home. I think Maureen looked up that there's director of operations and head of health and tech support. I mean, how did this system come about? Tell me what you've seen, some of the results of it. Again, I think this is such a good example of just applying such impactful, um, uncompromised kind of values within your personal life, your family life, like you do your professional life. So anyway, I would love for you to go through that a little bit for the audience.
Yeah, I think the title started years ago where we were trying to establish like really healthy habits in our life.
Uh-huh.
And there were so many different things that we needed to either bring into our home or into our relationship or our life. And it was just too much for one person to handle. So I said, okay, Michael, you're the director of health and nutrition. I'm the director of operations.
Yes.
And we divided and conquered that way. So, for example, as director of operations, my job is every week I look at our family calendar because we have a son and a daughter who also have pretty busy schedules. And I'm constantly looking at if there are any conflicts, what will be the drop off and pickup schedule,
Right.
and who's going to make sure, all these different requirements are handled. And so that's kind of something we've adopted with my daughter now that she's in high school. We've actually had to increase the level of
Yes.
the weekly meetings to what we call checkpoint meetings because her schedule has just really kind of become more complex. And it's not just the logistics of it, it's also the spirit with which she is approaching different aspects of her life, whether it's
Mhm.
academics, whether it's athletics or community service.
Mhm.
How
Mhm.
does she wanna show up? And so we just wanna make sure that we're helping to kinda guide her through some of these big decisions. So the 3 of us will get together and just say her name's Bailey. "Okay, Bailey, how are you feeling about XYZ?" Just to give her a place to share in a very authentic way things that she's thinking about and things that she needs help with. So that's how we manage that. And then on the health and nutrition side, I'll let you speak to that, Michael.
Yeah, it's just trying to incorporate healthy habits for the family. Making sure that we have time for exercise, and that could be because of schedules, a walk around the block. Making sure that we're drinking enough water. That we're being mindful of screen time. Since we live in an
Oh.
age where we are bombarded with devices, and that's not necessarily
Mhm.
a bad thing. It's just the reality that we're in, and so we have to be
Mhm.
cognizant of are we, putting the devices down and having time to talk and reflect? And so it's been a fun process. I would say a couple of things that I've, as we're talking and I'm reflecting on. I think one, I recognize that these habits are not habits that I grew up with. So when I think about my childhood and kind of household, we did not have, structured meeting times to come together, and it was really important, again, going back to the conversations that we would have early in our relationship, kind of forecasting like what type of, parents do we want to be and spouses do we want to be. We wanted to have systems and spaces where we had routines and normalcy and stability for ourselves and for our kids. Two, we wanted to model these behaviors so that as our children become adults, that they in turn practice the same behaviors and build upon them. And so we're kind of keeping these healthy habits alive. And then, three, I think it's been it's been really cool to see how our strengths and passions kind of show up. Marissa is an operational genius. We will like the number of spreadsheets that we have that have really operationalized our family's life, from vacations to school applications. I'll tell a story that I mean is was the but
Oh,
back
yeah.
so I was in a PhD program, and it was an exciting time for me. It was something I always wanted to do, but it's a daunting experience.
Mhm.
Is both the workload on top of the fact that it is in many ways lonely, when you're researching and writing and kind of going through the ebbs and flows of incorporating feedback. I did this at a time when I also was working full time. I was a superintendent of a charter school district here in Dallas, and we had a young family. And so kind of put all that together, I mean, it was challenging, and it got to a point where my committee, while supportive, like most committees do, at some point you get a letter. You don't want to get the letter, and the letter said, we are now at a point where we're going to give you X number of months to essentially complete your program and graduate. Should you not, then you will essentially default. And I remember getting that letter and sitting down, Marissa, and I was just like, I do not like know how I'm going to get through this. I mean, there's a lot, and in true fashion, leveraging her expertise, she said, "You know what? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to sit down," and she built a Gantt timeline. Yeah,
I still have it.
Yeah,
I built Michael a Gantt chart
yeah,
of what would
Oh.
be needed to get him to finish his doctorate, and it was a week by week swim lane diagram that had dependencies, precedents, antecedents, dependents that were
Wow.
needed, we followed that schedule week to week,
ev-
and he was able to finish.
every day.
Thank the Lord.
Yeah, every day.
So I'm assuming with that terminology that you gave me, just so that I better it's almost taking small bites of the apple to get to the end
Yeah,
of it, right? So it
absolutely.
basically those yes, the terminology you just gave, I'm assuming is that it is breaking it down a day by day kind of
Exactly.
okay.
And also, it was absolutely breaking it down into smaller pieces to make it more consumable, but
Uh-huh.
also really clarifying and visualizing the dependencies between different components of his doctorate so that
Okay.
he could see in sequence what needed to be done when, so that way he could get to the finish line. And so we
Oh,
actually documented that, and we would look at it on a regular basis. And I would say, okay, Michael, have you done, and like, let's just say, for simplicity's sake, have you done step 1? Have you done step 2? Have you done step 3? And he would slowly, make it through each step, and that's how we got to the finish line, but that doctorate was no joke.
Yeah, it was a challenging. I was up 4 in the morning to get to the schools all day, ride, working, leave, and I literally would drive to a local Panera.
Mhm.
And I would work until they closed, and I would stay later while they cleaned up. They closed the doors, but it would allow me to stay and then come home and then continue on. And this is every single day. But having again that process in place was critical. And that same kind of mindset and framework is something that we've applied with our kids. Right? It could
mhm,
we have a history project, or
mhm,
we need to get 100 hours of community service. And so how do you start with the end and go in mind, work backwards
mhm.
and make it, bite size? And so, yeah, it's again, strengths showing up.
Mhm.
It's been really exciting to see how that played out. For me, it's enriched my life for me in very tangible ways that I spoke to.
What's so interesting is I've naturally tried to, in some kind of way teach my children the same thing, especially when you were talking about, even within our company, we start with the end goal and we work backwards, right? But, I think about what you just, how you explained it, Marissa, and I'm thinking how much everyone needs a Marissa in their life to understand how to really break it down and really put um, just some key terms behind it. It sounds like what you're doing is me on steroids, most definitely. But you're right. Even with your own children and the goals that you want them to meet, because you're at this point in time, as you know, with your daughter, you're building a resume. You truly are building a resume at this point. You're truly building her brand, and so in order for that to happen, um, you have to you have to figure out how to make it bite-sized pieces. Um, and that is and just let's go through this. When I'm getting to know both of you, I mean, I can see why you were brought together. You guys, make the perfect whole, WHOLE. Am I correct about that in just knowing that your strengths are different, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And to come
absolutely.
together as a whole. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when we first got together, so we met in college, and I was a computer science math person, hardcore STEM student, and Michael was in the sociology anthropology department. And I remember taking classes with Michael, with
Uh-huh.
Black Studies class,
Yes.
and the way he was able to contextualize books we were reading, connect dots,
Mhm.
provide analysis to the professor. I was in awe. I was like, "Oh my god." I mean, this brother is smart and he is well read. And I just think that was a skill that at the time I didn't have. And I've always really appreciated that about Michael. He is the kind of person who reads everything from like The Economist to I don't know, Vibe magazine when Vibe was still around. And he was just really good at bringing different parts of the world together in one place,
Mhm, mhm.
and I've just always really appreciated that about him.
Well, and I would argue, Marissa is the smartest person, that I know and have met. And I say that like clearly I'm biased, right, because I'm married, but objectively, I again have evidence in the receipts. I remember being, in a dorm room and it was 11 o'clock at night, and Marissa is typing away on the computer programming in languages that I have absolutely no idea what it means, but getting excited to say like, my program is complete, it's working, I want to show it to you. And I was just like, this is amazing. Like as someone who respects education and learning and inquiry, to see it play out in a field that is abstract for many people, right? High level
Mhm.
mathematics,
Uh-huh.
computer science, like languages and programming, and
Mm.
I was in awe and continue to be so. I mean, I'm thinking about like then working in the pro trading systems and
Yeah.
currencies. I mean, it's just you hear about these experiences or read about them in a Wall Street Journal or New York Times, and then you see it play out, with the person that you're married to. You're like, this is it's amazing, and I think that coming together, has really provided balance. I think it's also, I mean, it keeps life exciting.
Mm.
Right, like, we could,
Absolutely.
talk about things, both respectfully in terms of our the sectors that we're in, add perspectives that you may not otherwise think of, as well as, like, laugh and have fun and, about anything, right? Like, it could be both the mundane, the silly, and the serious, and so that's been, another aspect of our life's journey that has been, so rewarding.
Absolutely. I love the way that you both shared about one another and each other's strengths. I mean, that was just beautiful too. And Marissa, let me ask you. I know that you sit on several boards, and that has been your focus. But do you consult for different firms and different industries, and sort of bring your expertise to those industries? Do you do a little bit of that as well?
Yeah, I'm starting to do more of that than I have in the past. So right now it's been through different board engagements that I've been asked to help on different projects. But
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely, especially as it pertains to digital transformations and looking at organizations, whether or not they're right size or if they have the right skill set, if they're using the right technologies. So yes, I'm doing.
Okay. Okay. I asked that for a different reason. But let me switch to this. So, Michael, as president and CEO of Parkland Health Foundation, how do you balance the operational leadership with vision casting for the future of healthcare?
Yeah,
How do you balance the two? Both are very important when I think of healthcare and where we are today, and especially with all the decisions being made, and where we may have to go. Just how do you balance that?
so, first, I try to really, I've worked at honing like systems and kind of structures that allow me the bandwidth and capacity
Mhm,
to really focus on both ends of the spectrum as you described it. And
mhm,
so, in a very practical standpoint, like in my calendar, if I would look at my calendar week to week, I have blocked out time. There's a kind of arc of the schedule, if you will, recognizing that there are times where that may not always work. But for the most part, I try to be very
mhm,
religious in sticking to the schedule, such that I know on Mondays and Fridays, generally speaking, that's my thinking time, right? I have sacred
mhm.
time where,
Right.
I'm speaking to thought leaders, both in sector and out of sector. I'm meeting with individuals that can really help expand my thinking, or I
Mhm.
can approach with questions as I'm kind of looking at the market and landscape and saying, okay, here's what I am forecasting is going to happen. Is it true? And then, on Tuesdays, it's like my kind of focus internal time, where I'm meeting, having weekly one-on-ones with my direct reports, skip level meetings, meeting with executives at the hospital system. I have my kind of business development time that's carved out, where I'm, as I say, on the street, really talking to executives and leaders and heads of foundations, philanthropic investors. And so that process has really allowed me the space and the ability to flex in ways that ultimately I believe is contributing to the work that we're doing at Parkland, certainly at the foundation and in service of advancing the mission, which for us is we want to advance wellness, we want to relieve suffering, and we want to develop and educate the next generation of clinicians that ultimately will advance health and wellness and well-being across Dallas County. But having those processes and then working with my team to ensure that they have the resources and skills needed and are developed in such a way that everything is not necessarily dependent on me to make a decision. I've been in spaces where early in my career that was not the case. And it became very difficult to move from, that kind of tactical day-to-day work. I mean, I think about Heifetz, from a leadership standpoint, talks about, as a leader, you need to kind of modulate between the dance floor and the balcony. And I would say, while we do that, early in my career, I spent a lot of time on the dance floor. And it was hard to zoom out and really have the perspective necessary to say, okay, what's happening, right? What are the trends that I'm seeing, right? How can I ensure that we are really moving the organization forward, making the necessary progress we need to fulfill the mission and really advance the vision that we have for the organization? And so I'm appreciative of what we've been able to accomplish. And it's a work in progress. Right now, there's a lot of uncertainty in the market, generally speaking, and certainly as it pertains to healthcare. And so I certainly am finding that it's necessary for me to lean in even more in asking a lot of questions and spending a lot of time meeting with institutions and individuals who are respected economists and futurists, if you will, and individuals that I think can help guide me, as I'm considering decisions for the organization, and then work with certainly the hospital system as we're thinking about the task at hand.
As I'm listening to you, you are explaining I love to dive into different kinds of leadership. It sort of goes along with what I love to do within the business world is understanding the different kinds of leadership within an organizational structure, right? And I think one thing that allows leaders such as yourself to be visionary leaders is that you have a healthy organization that feels empowered to do what they need to do. And I always like to talk about the inverted triangle, right? That you empower your people to make decisions, and that allows you to be the visionary leader, which I believe a visionary leader is a servant leader as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
And so, you know, I, uh, I absolutely loved your answer, and I often ask questions to get to that because another big piece I believe in being uncompromised professionally is understand the leadership styles that are needed at the time
Yeah.
or the season of an organization. Because I mean, there's a time for a transformative kind of leadership. And then there's a time for a servant leadership. And I believe everything that falls underneath that servant leadership is when the organization is thriving and you're getting the best out of your people because they truly are empowered to develop their own leadership skills, but also to make decisions, to be creative, innovative, and all those things. And I'd love to get your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. For me, as I think about the various kind of leadership archetypes that I need to bring to the work every single day, what really grounds the approach that I take is keeping the patient at the center of the work. When I was in education, it was keeping the student and the
Student.
family at the center, right? And
Mhm,
so,
mhm.
to the extent that I never deviate from that, it really allows me to ask some questions. What is needed to ensure that any person in Dallas County has access to high quality and compassionate healthcare? What are the conditions necessary for them to thrive? What takes a child to a place where they can ultimately mature along developmental kind of
Mm.
spectrum and pathway to become an adult that is productive, that is thriving, that is contributing to the economy of Dallas County? What ensures that a mother can have a successful delivery? and that she is healthy and that of her child. I mean, those are some of the questions that I begin with and go back to. And then based on that, then it becomes okay, what from an organizational standpoint is necessary? What has to be true? And I develop some kind of theses, if you will, to say, okay, if I do this, right, then this is gonna happen, right? If I bring on these types of individuals, right, from a leadership standpoint that I know can effectively manage their books of business, have the competencies to support and grow their teams, are focused really on our goals, and have set strong KPIs, and we're managing accordingly, that ultimately, right, we have a greater likelihood of achieving success. And then we define success in very quantifiable ways, such that, the public at large has a level of confidence in the work that we're doing, right? If I'm
Mhm,
engaging in a
mhm,
exercise where I'm asking an individual organization to make a philanthropic investment in the work that we're doing, right? There's a level of trust, right? There's a partnership that we have entered into, and there's an expectation that we're going to deliver on those promises. And same is for the community at large, right? That they are
mhm,
entrusting us to provide quality of healthcare that's going to allow them, right, to progress on their healing journey. That's really important, and so that level of accountability drives our decision making. It drives how I show up every single day. It drives me holding up the mirror constantly to say, okay, great. What have we done well?
mhm.
Right. What do I need to do differently? How do we come back and recalibrate in a way that is ultimately going to progress the goals and shared vision that we set forth? But it's a iterative process. It definitely changes, as you said, depending on the maturity of the organization, what we're facing, the goals that we set forth. And I think that's part of what right keeps makes leadership exciting. It definitely makes it complex and challenging, but it also keeps it exciting because no day is the same, and as leaders, we cannot bring right the same archetype and posture to the work every single day and expect right different results.
Right. Right, and I love your answer when you were talking about, making sure, strong KPIs are in place, key performance indicators, but and just making sure that there's solid things in place so that you can have this kind of seasoned, mature organization where the visionary leader can be the visionary leader or the servant, right? And the servant leader, because I think that is a huge piece, as we work with our clients as well. Those are huge pieces that we, dive into. What have those goals and objectives really been set, right? That are achievable. Are they achievable? And do they have the resources and the people to achieve them, right? I mean, you get into all the intricacy details in order for other visions to take place or for us to even think of other strategic places to go, right? To execute the visions. Anyway, what were you going to say, Marissa? Did you have something to
I
add to
was
that?
just gonna add that I think that to your point, related to servant leadership, what really is impactful is when you create a space for those on your team to be their true authentic selves and to feel included.
Yes.
And so I have found over the course of my career, asking
Mhm.
members of my team, irrespective of their level, what do you think?
Mm,
What's your perspective? What decision would you make?
Mhm.
That has just gone so far. And it's really made individuals, especially at more junior levels, feel like they have a place in the organization. And when that happens repeatedly over time, that's when I found you really start to get the best out of your people. And so I've always tried to practice inclusive leadership where
Yeah.
I allow everyone, irrespective of level, like if I'm a VP and you're an analyst, that's cool. I still want to know what your perspective is because oftentimes individuals who are closest to the details, they can have a perspective that you're not even thinking about. So I've always found that to be really important when you think about leadership archetypes.
that's good.
I don't that's really good, Marissa. I don't remember what guest I had on, but they talked about inclusive leadership as well. And they talked about that how a great leader can walk into a room similar to what you said, and you make sure that the junior level as well as the senior level, that if you can even notice body language, body
Mhm,
posture around a
mhm,
huge
mhm.
conference table or, whether you're in a wherever you are, right? And you can notice, are they speaking up? Or you can help them speak up, right? You can help, and I guess what I'm saying here is you're right. You're getting the best out of your people, and I love that terminology, that inclusive leadership. Which again, I believe that's just another branch that falls off of servant leadership. When
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
okay, and you know, yes, absolutely loved your answer. That was so good.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes, yes. Well, Marissa, my next question was for you. You know, you've spent 20 plus years navigating executive roles and you now serve on multiple boards. How has your approach to leadership evolved across different sectors?
Yeah, I've worked in financial services, I've worked in big tech, I've worked in aviation. And what I have found is as an individual, I had a mentor who used to always tell me to trust my resume. Like the
Mm,
beginning of my career, I was a
mm,
little nervous and apprehensive about whether or not I belong. But I got to a point where I got a level of confidence because I had been to the right schools, I'd been trained, I'd had the right jobs, and I needed to trust that I had the tooling needed to actually drive some strategy forward. And so once I began to take that mindset, I was really able to then lead because not only was I able to create a vision, I was able to effectively communicate it. And I've tried to take that model to whatever organization I'm a part of. But what I've also tried to do is really listen. I'm a really good listener.
it's
And I and sometimes to a fault because like I'll say to Michael, "You just said this, but now you're saying something else." But I do try to listen. I also, as I said earlier, I try to include everyone. I really want to hear everyone's perspective because I truly believe in the wisdom of the crowds. Like I know for a
great.
fact, well, yes, I'm going to bring a lot of resources and a lot of ideas and a lot of problem solving skills to the table. There
Mm,
are individuals who know things that I may not be thinking about. And the way you're going to develop the best product, drive revenue, enter new markets, scale businesses, reorg. The way you're going to solve some of these really complex problems is you need the wisdom of the crowd. You need a diverse team with diverse trains of thought. So I've always tried to take that approach to the organizations that I'm a part of. I've also tried to be my authentic self. I like to have fun at work. I am someone who laughs. I don't like really stressful, kind of difficult environments. I used to work on Wall Street. I worked on Wall Street for over 5 years and it was great. And so I know how to, thrive in
mhm,
those types of environments.
mhm,
But I like to laugh. And so I
mm.
really try to develop teams such that we have fun at work, but we're also doing great things for our organization.
That is so good. That's great. Michael, how do you want to add anything to that as well?
yeah. I think what's resonating among other things with me is this idea of really empowering
Mhm.
others in the room
Mm,
to feel the sense of agency, and for me, how that is manifested working in kind of traditional very hierarchical organizations like healthcare hospital systems. I mean, there's a kind of a behavior that is very bureaucratic that comes with a lot of positives but also can be challenging and complex to navigate through. And
right.
so often what I've encountered is that individuals almost need permission. Like there are times where I have to verbalize to my team, like I need you to kind of step in and offer a different perspective or way of thinking about something, because ultimately, should you not do that, I know for a fact, right, that we're going to miss the mark. Right, we're not thinking about this in the most holistic way possible, especially if we're trying to kind of shift a perspective or shift the organization in a way that we've never done something. And so, especially the last several years, like we've really taken that on, and the results have been very positive.
Mhm.
But it took right kind of changing the culture of the organization in such a way where individuals really felt
Yeah.
empowered, and felt that they had agency to ask questions, to offer input, irrespective, as you said, of level or function.
Yeah, and Michael's so right. I mean, if you look at organizational behavior over the past 20 years,
Mm,
especially in corporate America, you'll see this. Like
mhm,
in the early 2000s, it was incredibly hierarchical and you only really you communicated up, right? You talked to one person above you, who talked to one person above you, and I remember I was at a financial services firm and that was kind of how decisions were made. Now, I think what you saw, like, after the big recession, after the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, that's when you started to see communication start to flatten a little bit because that is when people were like, "Oh, something's gone wrong.
Yes.
And there were individuals in my organization who knew there was a problem, but didn't feel comfortable speaking up. And had we had a different culture, we could have proactively solved this problem. And that's what I think leaders had to say from a cultural, organizational behavior standpoint. We need to change our culture because we're not getting the insights we need because people don't feel comfortable.
Mm.
And it's until you create some level of safety, some level of transparency in your organization that you're going to get the best problem solvers out of your people. And that's where I think we're kind of seeing this shift in the market where, especially now, you're seeing this a lot in financial services with all the regulation. You see regulators even asking, how are you engaging different levels of your organization? So I think that's what's happening over time, and a lot of it had to was a result of these external factors.
I add one more thing too that I would say is kind of mediating, I think, how we're thinking about this as
Mhm.
well. You know, we are seeing a significant generational shift
Oh, yeah.
and who is entering and operating within right companies and in the market. And so as leaders, you know, we cannot rely on some of the kind of tried and true traditional methods of managing and leading organizations, especially if we're trying to affect change.
Yeah.
And so I certainly am seeing as I look across my team, you know, the team that I inherited was
Mhm.
long tenured, really successful. And we have shifted as we're bringing in individuals, right, who are younger, who think differently. And because of how they've grown up professionally and personally and accessing information, the kind of 24/7 news cycle, you know, they approach organizations with a different level of boldness, if you will,
Yeah.
right? Like they are going to tell you
Yeah.
what they think, and they're going to expect that they have an opportunity to have a seat at the table and show up, which is exciting, right? And it could be scary at times for individuals that aren't used to that
Yeah.
as a leader and a manager. But
Mhm.
what I've tried to do is say, how do we harness right that passion and that
Yes.
energy in such a way that it actually is going to move the needle in very demonstrable ways. But I would
Mhm.
say for me and certainly for leaders in my organization, we've had to really think critically about like we cannot show up the same way every single day.
Mhm.
Like it is not going to work, and in fact, it's going to create a little attention,
Yeah.
both within the organization as you have kind of multi generational workspaces,
Mhm.
and kind of really cause the organization to falter.
Mhm. Oh my gosh, you guys have said so much here. But just hitting on what you just said, Michael, I think that this generation that is coming into the workplace, Gen Z, millennials,
Yep.
I believe that they are forcing organizations to be more transparent, like you said, have real conversations. They're forcing organizations to respect and balance their lives because they realize the balance is the best for their mental health. You know, I think about when I graduated from college. I'm considerably older than you all. I graduated back in 1991. Okay. And so I went to work for PepsiCo at the time. And I think about at that time, you had several leaders who were really trying to push the envelope, like when you said that, in the 2000s, we were still, reporting up, but you had several organizations that were sort of ahead of the game, and I have to say Procter& and Gamble was one of them, PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, some of those companies, right? And what they were doing is they were training organizational behavior to have the inverted pyramid style, which is the
Mm.
empowerment, more
Yeah.
of the inclusive style. In fact, on my podcast, just about gosh, it's almost a year ago, and he recently passed away,
I know. We
a
saw.
man by the name of Ron Parker.
Yeah, we knew Ron Parker.
Okay, well, Ron Parker was one of my very first mentors at PepsiCo, and, yeah, it's hard to believe that he's gone, and, wow, they can edit anything out. I'm about to get tears, but anyway, when you look at Ron Parker, you
Mm.
look at Ursula Burns, I don't know if you know who that is,
We know who she is.
okay, when you look at Kenneth Chenault,
Yes. Yeah.
um,
Mm.
when you look at I mean, and I'm missing so many other names right now, but those were the leaders during my time coming out of college, at PepsiCo. I was part of the Executive Leadership Council.
Yes.
Ron put me into the ELC immediately. He's the reason why I went back to get my MBA.
Oh, no.
But when you look at what they did, um, the origination of even the key term, which we have now taken out of corporate America for the most part, when you look at the term of DE&I, the origination of all of that was inclusive leadership.
Yes.
And that is why you had people of all races, all cultures who were excited about that because it's the same thing that you just you described, Marissa, as well as you, Michael, is that everyone had a voice and a seat at the table. I remember asking Ron during my time on my podcast, I asked him a question. I said, "Give me the definition of
Mhm.
diversity." And all he said, and this is why it was so successful back then and how they were able to orchestrate through. He says it's creativity, it's innovation
Yes.
from everyone,
Yes.
from
Yeah.
everyone at the table.
Yes.
So it could be the Caucasian woman from New Jersey
Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
versus the Caucasian woman from Kansas,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right?
Right.
That's diversity,
Yes.
right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so it could, again, it's geographical diversity, it's cultural diversity, it's a diversity of generational now, which you're describing now, that we have to come to work differently because it's multi-generational. So again, we are respecting and doing inclusive leadership at
Yeah.
every level,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and you're right. That is how you get the best. When I asked him the question, he goes, "You will get your best creative answers, your
Mhm.
best innovation from understanding everyone's thought around a table." The
Yeah.
exact same thing you said, Marissa. And my other guest was Michael Ford, who's in charge of corporate real estate for AT&T globally. Had him on, and he said the same exact thing.
Mm.
And the reason I'm even name dropping and saying this is because I want our listeners to know there's a commonality of
Yeah.
great leadership.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's great leadership. It's
That's right.
when you know that each person has something to bring at every level, junior level and on up, generational level and on up, racial, different cultural. That is when you get your best and your brightest ideas and your best execution. So anyway, anything you guys want to add to that as well? So
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would offer, and I was having a conversation recently with someone about what advice would I give to right the millennials and Gen Z. I would say much like we are pushing ourselves right to be thoughtful, intentional, and inclusive. I would offer for them to also to value wisdom and perspective from those right that may have kind of institutional memory and tenure,
yes.
which is not the easiest thing to do. I think every generation faces this. And you look at history and the arc of history, right? There's like social movements. It's like, oh, they're stodgy and they're moving at a pace that's too slow. And so we're gonna come in and we're gonna like kind of burn the building down and kind of create a new. And so while yeah, passion is definitely helpful, it
Mhm,
is also incredibly important,
mhm,
right? To really be thoughtful around, right? Again, wisdom and intentional about kind of prudence and pragmatism that those
mhm.
who have been in the organization for some time and have navigated successfully the ebbs and flows, right, of how organizations behave. I think that could be really valuable. And so I'd offer that right to those that may be earlier in their careers or starting out. Certainly be thoughtful of seeking out those perspectives and valuable
Absolutely.
perspectives. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that is part of the training within organizational behavior of teaching the millennials, the Gen Zs, also how to be
Yes.
inclusive leadership
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Agreed.
and how to respect diversity within an organization. It's not just you bringing these terminal, right? But it's also understanding that you have to absolutely, because there is respecting wisdom around a table is very pertinent in moving the organization forward.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's really good. Okay, I'm on my last question here. I there's some guests that I have to do part 2 with, and I'm just gonna have to say you guys are that guest I'm gonna have to do a part 2 with at some point.
Good report to it.
Yes, there's so much more. You know, when you're not working or strategizing or leading or what that kind of thing, let's just end with this question. What brings you joy? Who or what mentors have been the most impactful in your life? You can share one or all these things. Just how would you want to end, this wonderful discussion that we've had? What has been the most impactful, whether it's people, whether it's your faith, what has or is it all of the all above?
Yeah.
But, and what brings you joy? And joy doesn't mean happiness.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'll take the joy question. You
Yeah.
can take that.
Okay, alright.
So I think what brings us joy is spending time with our family and our friends.
Mhm.
And we do love to travel, but it doesn't have to be some extravagant trip. Like even as a family, if we just, go to the park or if we go watch our kids play basketball or go to some athletic event for our kids. That has been, I think, the most joyous and fulfilling for us because it really has been a time for us to be our true selves, to really reconnect, to really share. And, as I said earlier, life has ups and downs. And what we've been really good at is coming together as a family and dealing with some of the different challenges that we face. But I would say that, joy also comes in, we have fun, we love music. Michael is a music head. He listens to all kinds of music. I mean, he gives our kids history lessons on what real hip hop is and they have to like listen to all these groups and Michael's like, "Oh, you think this song is great?" He's sampling Luther Vandross, Michael's always,
Oh, wait, but just to add to that before you go on, it's going to more than benefit. I have an 18 and 22-year-old. If you were to look at their playlist, you it stems all the way back to the
Yes.
80s. They know their music, so keep educating. And
We'll do it.
it's so fun when we go on vacations, they will play stuff that you're like, "Why is"
exactly.
okay, go
Exactly.
I love it. I
Oh,
love
so
it.
I mean, so we do a lot of fun activities
yeah.
as a family. And I think that's what ultimately brings us joy. We have great friends. Our extended family is great. Our parents are truly supportive. And so we just try to kind of reconnect with individuals who support us and care for us. And I think that kind of fills our joy cup up.
Yeah.
Oh, love that, love that.
100% agree. In terms of just like what has motivated us, I mean, our faith. You know, we we believe in that God has an assignment and a purpose for our lives, and while we may not always know all of the steps, we are increasingly having to trust the process and trust Him. And in doing so, we're always reminded of the responsibility, and it is an awesome responsibility to serve others in any way that we can, whether it's professionally, our civic work, the boards that we serve on, or the organizations that we partner or volunteer with. That is critically important. For me, I grew up in a household, especially I think about my mother, who, I mean, I was in the church and spent the majority of my time there. It has shaped, how I understand the world and the work that I do. I mentioned, it's important work, but it can be heavy. And I recognize that it so have to always go back to why we're here, what we're called to do, and how in the interactions that we have, especially when dealing is in healthcare, oftentimes
Mm.
when someone is most vulnerable, when they are at their lowest, because they're in a life-threatening situation. Healing is starts with how you show up, how you greet someone, and remind them that they're more than the situation that they are facing. And so I've tried to go back to that as a
Yeah.
touchstone in the work that I do and we do, and certainly in our family. And I think if more of us kind of approach the work and the world that way, then hopefully, we can get to a place where we see, greater unity and we can begin to realize the community that we want to see. Right? We talk about the beloved community. I firmly believe that. I mean, that we can achieve the beloved community.
The Dr. King.
Is Dr. King.
Dr. King.
We have to, but
Mhm.
it requires us, right, to be really thoughtful and understand and respect our humanity, and to treat each other accordingly. So, yeah, I'd offer that, right, to the listeners.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, I think this is a great place to end. I can't tell you that I enjoyed this so much. You, uh, you 2 are very, very special in a lot of ways. You have great assignments on your life, and such a time as this,
Yeah, well,
that this, community, this state, this nation, this world needs you. So, I am just more than honored to know you and to walk this journey with you, and maybe we can get together as dinner, for dinner as couples. That would be fun, so
Great. That would be great. You said, thank you for having us.
okay.
This is
Well,
fun. This is exciting.
it's fun, it fills my cup every time I do this with such solid people like you all. It's just and I hope that it does the same for you and then, of course, for the listeners as well.
Absolutely.
But it's more that it has been a lot of fun today, and I think we covered a good amount of stuff that,
Yes, we did. This
yeah.
is our first time doing a podcast together. Yeah, so thank
Re
you. Man, this has been cool.
Oh, you couldn't have told me that. I mean, you guys are just wonderful, but it's an attest it's a testimony of your marriage and what God's doing within your marriage as well. Very
Well,
solid, so
thank
well,
you.
thank you, thank you.